Hi, I'm Peggy with Headshots by Peggy, and today we have Sheldon Candis with us. He's an actor, he's a writer, a producer, and a director.
Yes.
Big time director now.
Thankful to be working. Yes.
So, Sheldon, you went to USC
Yes.
Film School.
Yes.
So, is that where you originally met John Singleton?
That is. Well, actually, I think we can back up a little bit. I think I encountered John the first way many of us did, being a young kid seeing Boys in the Hood in a movie theater, and it completely rocking me to my emotional core. You know, that's one of the few movies that keeps playing in my sensibility throughout my entire life, you know. And so it's the moment that you see that film at a young age and it has such a resonance with you. That was a big part of me wanting to go to USC, was to be like my hero, John Singleton.
So when you went to USC, was your goal to be an actor, a filmmaker, a director, a producer? What was your first thought? Like, when I grow up, I'm gonna...
Well, I was fortunate enough to be an actor who went to film school. So it's a very interesting education that you're getting when you move to LA, because by day I'm in class breaking down the masters of cinema, you know, Kurosawa, Fellini, Hitchcock, you know, and you're learning how they told stories, but then also I'm rushing to make a McDonald's audition off La Brea. So if I can get out of this class and get to my car and get to that audition. So really for me, that was a big part of it. And then I was a production assistant on film sets for many, many years. Yes.
So how did you end up getting a relationship with John Singleton?
You know, every time I would see him, I would just always make sure, you know, I said hi to him, and I always reminded him, hey man, I'm Sheldon from SC. But you know what's interesting about that is oftentimes we'll encounter our heroes, or we'll encounter people in the industry, and you just want them to see you.
Right.
But a big part of who you are is your art, is your work. And so it's the moment that I make my first film, the moment I make Love, that's the moment that John says, you know, I get a phone call. I answer, it's like this random number, and it's Sheldon, it's John. And I'm like, John who?
John who?
He's like, John Singleton, fool. I'm like, oh, John, as if you call me every day. But it was one of the best phone calls I've ever gotten, where he says, hey man, I'm down in Miami. I just left the AMC theater. I watched your movie. It's beautiful.
Wow.
And that, I mean, even talking about it right now, I still get a chill, because to me, that's something I always hold on to in my relationship with John.
Yeah, he's definitely missed.
Yes.
It's sad he went way, way before his time.
A lot of the greats do go early, you know?
So we only get them for a while.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you went to film school.
Mm-hmm.
You were already an actor.
Mm-hmm.
So you're fresh out of film school. What's your biggest, I guess, shock or biggest reality taking what you learned in film school and applying it in real life situations?
You know, really what happens is, and I'm really fortunate because while I was in film school too, I was working on sets as a production assistant. So you're learning so much by osmosis and by practice on real sets. So that's the difference between being like a film student and
that just fresh off, never been on set.
You got your shot list, you got your storyboards, and you got basically all the time in the world to shoot your short film. It's different once you start making a film, especially an independent film, because there's just never enough time.
Yeah.
Or money, and you're always having to process, like breaking down, how am I going to make my day? How am I going to execute this scene? Knowing that, you know, once it's done, you know. And that's the thing that I'm most thankful for, learning, being on sets after being a PA and being in the AD department for a while, is literally, how do you make your day as a director, right? And if you're coming into a scene and coming into a moment, you very well may have 10 shots, but that clock is ticking. So you have to be processing in real time. How can I turn 10 shots into 6 shots? And oftentimes, it may even be less than that. And that's the thing that I don't think that you're really getting in film school, right? And so, yeah.
Yeah. So, I know I have a lot of actors that watch. This is the whole, premise for why this exists is kind of giving, tips. And so as a director, I think this is something that actors don't understand at all. How does the casting process work on your side? Okay, so I get it. I'm a headshot photographer. I've got to make that headshot pop. They got to get the casting director's attention. They get the audition. They get the call back. And now what?
Yeah, this is one thing that I always pass along, by being an actor on that side of the camera and then being a director behind the table and behind the lens. Regardless if you get the job or not, just be unforgettable in the room.
Right.
Be unforgettable in the room. Even if you get it or not, that goes a very, very long way. That you're this performer, you're this artist, that, hey, you may not be right for a role, but man, that guy, that woman,
right.
She came in this room and set it on fire. And I think that because we're so conditioned to the audition is the means to get the job, I think a lot of actors forget that, you know what? That's your opportunity to perform for the day.
Exactly.
That's your audience for the day.
You get to do what you love today. You get to go in there and you get to give it all.
To give it all, and think about it in terms of, you know what, I'm here to set this room on fire. I'm here to give the most genuine portrayal of the human condition possible, and leave everything else. I always say focus on what you can control. There's so much being an actor, you have no control over it. So when you leave the room, throw the sides away. Just, be very, very mindful of your mental health and your well-being going through this journey. Don't carry it with you. Give the performance, leave the stage, the lights go out. Yeah.
So now this is something, that we've been talking about a lot lately, and that is social media. How big of a play does that come into casting? I mean, honestly, I know it's a thing now.
Yeah, it has become a thing. It definitely has, and we can't deny that it definitely is a thing. But I'm just all about the art, and I just feel like I really feel for the modern day actor having to take on that.
Because basically you're asking your talent to promote your project for you. That's and I understand that from every angle that, but you don't want to feel like you're sacrificing the talent or the art for the numbers.
Yeah, I just want to honestly believe the best actor gets the job. Whether they have 0 Instagram followers or they have 1.2 million.
Right.
Like, I really want to believe that when it comes to the point of making a film, it's the person who comes in and you truly empathize and feel for that portrayal of what they're bringing forth in the room. So that is a reality, and we can't deny it. But I just honestly wouldn't want anyone to put that pressure on themselves,
right?
Because then also too, how much work are you dedicating towards the craft?
If you're just worrying about being on the
smoke and mirrors of social media,
right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's the pretty, it's the makeup, it's the, it's the hair, the things that don't really, the surface stuff that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You really need to concentrate on the real stuff.
Yeah.
But still know that it's a thing.
It is a thing.
You can't forget it. I want to forget it, but you can't forget it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is, like, in Hollywood right now, there's a lot of discussion about diversity. I kind of feel like people have their own definition of what diversity is. I mean, you have this conversation, so there's like, oh yeah, and I'm like, it's not diverse, So how do you define diversity, and where do you think, how do you implement that in your projects, and what's kind of your view on that, on what you can do?
Well, I believe that we have to be the change we want to see, and So if I'm fortunate enough to be a director on a project, I'm trying my very hardest to put diverse faces and energies within the space. I'm basically feeling like I want to hopefully give someone an opportunity that normally wouldn't get an opportunity because someone like me isn't in the directing chair.
Right.
Or someone who doesn't have the cultural sensitivity or awareness to say, hey, look at our crew. There aren't enough black and brown or minority people working. So to me, it's that, but then it also comes with what education are you also offering the younger generation? Which individuals who, just like all of us, who grew up loving movies and loving this place as children, what young person can you grab and actually tangibly give them an education to help further their dreams? I think that's a big part of it. People wonder, what are the core issues with how things can change? Well, it really comes down to education and opportunity. It's the means and the access to education, but then someone has to give you a chance. Someone has to give you an opportunity.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And once again, John Singleton.
Yeah.
John, it wasn't only me. There was a lot of us that he gave opportunities to, that he gave education to. If someone came up to him and said, hey, I want to be a screenwriter, John would then point them in the direction, okay, here are the 3 books on screenwriting that you need to have.
Right.
These are like your story Bibles of screenwriting. That's the thing that I feel about his legacy that I will continue to amplify, and I'll continue to tell any and every person that I encounter. It just wasn't being the youngest ever nominated for an Academy Award. This guy literally helped as many people as possible.
And I think that's something, for me, I was fortunate enough, everything I know, I was taught, you know what I mean? I had somebody take me in under their wing and teach me and, and allow me to grow and show me. And I feel like that's so important, in this industry, that we find mentors and not be like competitive and think, oh, I don't want you to come up because you might take something from me. No, let's bring everybody up and we all elevate. And I think that's such an important way to look at life.
Yeah. I was a long distance runner in high school, cross country. Not a very good one, but it was the loophole I found of how I could make my high school basketball team, because all of my buddies were playing football, and so once basketball season came around, I would be the best in shape because I had been running. cross country long distance all fall. But the thing that I realized about that is I'm not in this race to be all state, to be all conference, to be the best runner in this pack. I'm here to set my best time. And I feel like the moment that you look to the left or the right of you, you won't reach your best time because you're concerned about what his time is, what that person's time is. And I think that that's a parable that applies to this industry that we're in. Just be focused on setting your best time.
Absolutely. That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
So what kind of a director are you? What do you expect from your actors on set? Do you kind of want them to own their character, or are you like, hey, when you say this word, I want you to lift your left hand a little bit to the right? Like how, are you a helicopter parent or on set, or you really like just kind of give the idea and want people to run with their...
It sounded very David Fincher-esque. Please be this. No.
Please.
No, but for me, because I'm an actor and because I grew up in community theater, and I'm such in love with the actor and the process of acting, I feel like, especially with like auditions, for example, I always love for an actor to come in, and first up is actor's choice. I know you've been running this thing through your heart and your mind and your spirit over and over again.
Right.
Show me what you got. Let's see your creative artistry apply to this character. So I always want to give the actor that space. And same thing within in directing, in film and television. Like, what is it that you have to give. And then I feel like it's a collaborative process of now we're building because we protect each other's blind spots. Actors are very, very keen individuals. So they very much may know something or identify something about a character that a director may miss.
Didn't see.
For me, it's different because I'm a writer-director. So I've completely born this character from a blank page over multiple drafts upon rewrites upon rewrites. So I pretty much know it, but it's an amazing thing when an actor says, "Hey, what about this?" And you're like, "Ooh, I never thought about that." Yeah. So I think that's the thing. You know, another thing that I love, you know, whenever I'm directing, the director's chair drives me crazy. I'm too far away from, like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a free show. Yeah. I want to be as closest to the performance as possible. I want to be right beside the camera. I want to be in the front row. Yeah. Because you see actors doing wonderful work. Yeah.
So what do you think? Because you know, you've been doing this for a while, even though you are a very young director. Yes. I'm going to ask you a different question, then I'll go back to what I was going to ask. Because you are, you know, you're relatively new to the industry, and you have, you know, a lot of success. Yeah. Are there things that you see that you want to do that aren't industry standard? Like, are there things that, like, you just, you know, does my question make sense?
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, I think, you know, I realize for myself as an artist, the filmmaker that I aspire to be, when I track back on it, not a lot of people get that opportunity. There's only a handful of people who get to make the biggest idea of a film, but be an auteur while doing it. So yeah, I mean, we can run them down: Quentin Tarantino, Spike Lee, you know, David Fincher, Darren Aronofsky, David O. Russell. These are the people, but when you look, it's a small group. And so when I think about that, yes, there are going to be a lot of boxes that exist within the industry that I'm just not going to fit into. Right. You know, that's not the vocation within the human condition that I want to present. Yeah.
So do you feel like you have the freedom to do things even though that's not industry standard? Do you feel like you have that freedom to make your little...
indie film wise.
Right.
Yes. Indie film
That's
wise.
where you can kind of shine and do.
Yeah. But when it comes to commercial directing or episodic television, or doing a feature film within a studio, you then have to understand that
there's a lot of people that you have to answer to.
There's a lot of people. And I think what can happen to many young filmmakers is because they are an auteur, they have a voice. I think those structures can be very challenging because you have to understand everything's not your baby. Right. Now, your indie film that you wrote and directed and you completely almost died to get made, right? That's your baby. Yeah. You know,
So what is it like completely different directing a commercial, directing an episode versus directing a feature film? And then, of course, it's obviously different because the indie film, you've got a lot more openness and control, but how about all the rest? Is that a lot different, or
you have to be very keen to understand the differences. So for example, I was fortunate enough, I shadowed John Singleton on his TV series Snowfall, and then I also got to shadow him on People vs. OJ. And then I went to work on Rebel, which he was an EP. The thing that I learned most from that experience that's different from film and television is that as a director, you have to be able to quickly adapt your coverage. How you thought about, how you pre-planned how you were going to direct the scene. Because there's just so many different elements in television that you have no control over. And so that's the thing that I'm most thankful for that experience is that, like, when I'm making a film, I know I'm going to cover this in one long master that's going to rest here. But at the end of the day, in TV, also depending on what the number one on the call sheet does, you know, when John Hamm, when Don Draper comes in and you really wished he would have stayed over by the window, but he felt like, nah, you know, I want to come back over to my desk. He's number one on the call sheet. He's Don Draper. Yes, Don Draper. You do go sit at your desk.
That's exactly what you do. Let me just rearrange my entire day for you. Oh,
yes.
wow, yeah. So it keeps you busy. It keeps your brain sharp.
Very much so.
There you go.
Yes.
So you look at the positive side of that.
Yes.
So you mentioned Spike Lee now. Spike Lee has his signature, dolly shot and everything. Do you have a signature thing that you kind of sneak into every project that you do?
I do. I do. I love shooting the back of characters' shoulders, but more specifically, kids. There's something about being behind a kid's head and their shoulders that I feel like translates us back to when we were
a kid and we were
the
seeing
world
through the
that,
child's eye.
Yeah, from that perspective.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm going to keep my eye on that
Yes.
now. That's your thing.
It's there.
Now, you have a new project coming up.
Yes.
You want to talk about it?
Oh, I'd love to. It's my first video game project. It's NBA 2K20. And this is the first year that SpringHill Entertainment is partnering with 2K Studios. SpringHill is LeBron James and Maverick Carter. Two individuals who also are bringing a tremendous amount of opportunities to a lot of filmmakers. And it was the best experience. Like it was my first experience in mocap, motion capture. So the actors come to a stage. They put on they look like digital pajamas. They have these little balls on them. And you make a movie. So basically we created a movie within a video game. And I had the fortunate experience of working with Idris Elba, Rosario Dawson, Thomas Middleditch, Ernie Hudson, a great new talent by the name of Derick Augustine. You'll see him in Forrest Whitaker's new TV series, Godfather of Harlem. Derick plays Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
So this is his breakthrough. And so Derick is the lead character in the game, in the movie within the game this year. And really the story is a star basketball player at a Division I big college program. His best friend, who's a bench player, gets in a game and gets hurt. And he rips his ACL. And the university pulls the kid's scholarship. And so our hero takes it upon himself to speak out and speak truth to power and rage against the machine and stand up for his friend who was wronged by the structure. Now, with him speaking out within the game, that can affect where he goes in the NBA draft. Because there may be a team that may be a little concerned about his political views or someone who would rock the boat. But he decides to be self-deprecating and selfless to speak up for someone who doesn't have a voice. And that's the core thematic.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm excited about that. Yeah. And my daughter, Ashlyn, is going to be even more excited about the release of this game. I'm sure she's already bought it and it's just waiting to be delivered.
September. Okay, let me ask you some questions. So, do you remember the moment in Headshots, which I'm sure you do, that forever it was a black and white 8x10, and then one day it went color?
Well,
where did that come from?
I'll tell you where that came from. I actually have an answer for that.
Nice.
First of all, they only had black and white photography for years. Okay. And then it was so expensive to print color. Okay. And you're too young to understand this, but back in the day, I don't know, you might have had, before the digital, you were acting before the digital. So, you would print out 100, and you'd have your resume printed on the back. And then when your resume changed, you're like, but you'd have all these headshots, and it was so expensive to print color. And then once that technology changed and color became cheap, easy, then or the same price as a black and white, then it was like, oh, let's do color.
Wow. I was a sophomore in high school when I booked my first ever national Coca-Cola commercial.
Oh, wow.
And my mother to this day still talks about being so excited to walk to the mailbox because she would see the envelopes. Yes.
That is awesome.
Yes.
That is awesome.
Yes.
And that's back when commercials paid some.
Yes. Yes. I was 15 years old, and I booked that Coca-Cola commercial, and like my mom, you literally thought like she would hit the lottery opening that
yeah, just be, oh man, this is
car.
my boy. He's got a check. That's awesome.
My first car after my high school car.
Wow.
I had an Infiniti G20.
Wow.
That
Coca-Cola
Coke commercial paid for.
That's a really cool story.
Yes.
So how did you get your first agent?
I went to, it was like an acting showcase in Charlotte, North Carolina. And there was an agent there, and I met her, and that was literally my first ever agent. And I literally thought I was Zach Morris in high school because I had a cell phone. I had one of the first. I had a big Tandy cell phone from Radio Shack, and it was like $4.50 a minute.
Right.
But because I was an actor and I had an agent, I had to have the cell phone.
You had to have the cell phone. That's great.
And it would be so great too, like if it ever like rang or I had it on vibrate in school, and I would see my agent's number, like, oh my gosh, audition. And I would run into the bathroom and I'd hear and write down the address and.
Oh wow, that's cool. So at 15 was your first big national commercial. After that, how long before you kind of did another big significant thing?
I did some theater, but it wasn't until I came to LA. And I'll never forget when I first got to LA. Within 2 weeks, I booked a Powerade national commercial.
Oh, nice.
Within my first 2 weeks of being in LA, I was like, oh man, this was easy. That wasn't hard at all.
What are these starving artist thing?
I got a job in 2 weeks. Are you kidding me? And then didn't get a job for like a few years, right? And so it just is different things. And to me, that's like, as you said, that's when commercials, you could literally live off of working commercials. And so for me, in the years that I'd be in LA, I always was fortunate enough to book 1 or 2 commercials a year. It was just enough, to keep going. And so I look back on it as like McDonald's and Pizza Hut. And yeah.
So since you brought up headshots, as a director, how important is a headshot to you? I know it's a lot, at the casting director level, but once it gets to you, how important is a headshot to you?
It isn't very important, but here's where it can backfire in a sense, though, is when the actual actor comes in the room and they look nothing like their headshot. And to me, that's the smoke and mirrors thing that I think is more on the photographer to present the true sense of someone as opposed to tricking people.
Well, see, I talk about that. I talk about not all photographers are created equal. I was a portrait photographer for years. A high-end portrait photographer, and I can make you look perfect. That's not a headshot. No. That is not a headshot. And so when I started doing headshots, you have to throw all that away, and I want that little expression, that deep, I want that wrinkle to show. I want that scar to show. I want that, all that. And I have clients that want me to Photoshop everything out to where they don't even have, and I will advise them heavily against it, but ultimately I'm going to do what they want. But I'm not going to put it up on my my showcase. But because to me, this is how I feel. I'm a Midwest girl, so I feel like if I were the director and I saw this, and then you walked in and you were nothing like this, I feel like you lied to me and you wasted my time. That's how serious I take it. I don't know if you're like that brutal about it, but I feel like I'm like, why? No, I liked this person, and that's not this person.
I'm not that brutal about it because at the end of the day, it all comes back to the work in the room.
Can you act?
Can you act? And not only, and not to sound all heady, it's not even so much can you act, can you be? Can you literally become someone that, like, you walk through that door and I thought I was seeing Amy Johnson, but wow, you literally became someone else in this moment. And that's the thing that any headshot is like, hey, it is what it is,
But it is important to look like your headshot.
Very much so. It's your headshot.
It's your first impression. It's your handshake.
Yes.
We used to meet like this.
Yes.
People don't meet like that anymore.
No.
They meet on a thumbnail.
Yes.
Or by the time it gets to you, you're probably, do you like the hard copy? Do you say, hey, leave me a hard copy? Are you the hard copy guy?
Because I remember being a young actor and being so excited when you finally had enough money to get new headshots and you would shoot your headshots. But I always loved like when you would shoot with a photographer and you would see the famous people that they shot and you're like, man, I know they have no problem paying for their headshots. Yeah, you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Oh, wow. So
yeah, that's funny. It is an investment.
Yes, very much so. Well, like you said, it's your calling card, right?
I think it's your health, your headshot. I don't know. What's your thought on what people should prioritize? What actors should prioritize in their life?
The work, like it's really working on it, and working on it is in so many different ways, right? But just being in the process of it, your health. Yeah. Health is huge. And also, too, building the right relationships. Because we're in an industry of nepotism. And if you weren't born into it, you have to create your nepotism. I was fortunate enough that I created my nepotism with John Singleton. And I think that that's important, but advice that I often give is instead of plucking the flower immediately, plant the seed. Exactly. So it's when you encounter someone, be working on knowing who they are over time, as opposed to immediately wanting something from them. Exactly. I think that that's super important. And there's so many wonderful actors who work regularly because they built strong relationships with directors, producers, casting directors, people who are always thinking about you because you're unforgettable. Yeah. We live in a city where who you know is everything, and yet we live in a city where nobody knows how to build relationships. Yeah. It's kind of sad. It's sad, and then it hit me one day that, so the old adage is it's all in who you know, but I was like, no, that's actually an incomplete statement. It's all in who you know who's willing to help you. Right. You can have all the talent in the world, but you still have to be chosen. Right. And I think that's the part of the industry that can become very isolating. It can become a very lonely place because people approach it from I. And it literally is, when you look at certain people's careers, that's a community of people that got them through. Exactly. Yeah. And I think like, okay, I know you, but when you're having a bad day, am I going to bother to call you, or am I just, hey, can you help me out? Those are two different things. And building a relationship is about actually getting, giving. What can I do to help you? Yeah. And then also too, when you're fortunate enough to have those relationships with gatekeepers, like know that, be very, very mindful of when you decide to ask. Exactly. Make it the right moment in the right time. I think is really important. Yeah. So I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I had a great time. Is there anything that you want to tell my audience before we go? Any last little words of wisdom or? Ooh, wow. Put you on the spot. I mean, right there. Right there. The spotlight. It got hot in here, like really fast. I mean, I think I realized that I really love this quote. Success is the journey and not the destination. That's good. But what often happens with actors and with us in this industry is that you're constantly saying, once I get there, once I get there, once I book that big show, once I book that movie, then I'll consider myself successful. No, you have to know that you're successful because you keep going. The journey, not the destination. And don't beat yourself up so much when you fail. I mean, a successful person is someone who fails time and time again, but does not blink. Yeah. That's the part of it. And I feel like anyone that we emulate and admire, we only witness their successes usually, but trust me, they have a lot of failures. Yeah. And we don't get to see them crying in their bedroom.
We don't get to see the past due bills that, their whatever, is going on in their life.
Yeah. Or like I heard a Donald Sutherland story. He said that when he first moved to Hollywood, they were so broke, him and his wife and the kids. He says that this is when he used to go to the studio. And he says he has the meeting at the studio and he has one black suit, but his pant leg has a hole in it. And he says he's just so freaking out, right? Think about it. It's my wife, my kids, this is important. Like, I need this. I can't walk in there with a hole in my pant leg. And he says his wife just grabs a Sharpie and paints his leg. Right? Yeah. So I just feel like I always love sharing those stories of people who've come before us, because even when it's bad for you, it probably ain't that bad.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. That's good. Good reminder. Yes. Good reminder. Yes. Nobody's had to draw Sharpie on my leg this week. That's awesome. Well, thank you again. And we are going to all go check out your Xbox game and PlayStation.
NBA 2K20 coming in September.
September. Yes. Awesome. Yes. So exciting. And thanks for all the time that you took just to share. And this was fun.
Yes.
All right. Now, are you a social media guy? Can they follow you and stalk you on,
Hey, I think it's flattering to have a stalker.
You think that, but no.
No, I'm the easiest person to find. I'm just at Sheldon Candis. SheldonCandis. That's my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram.
It's everywhere.
That's everywhere. It's even my email.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'll have a link below, and I'll have your IMDb below. And do you have a website?
It is, once again, www.sheldoncandis.com.
There you go.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm gonna. All right. Well, make sure that he's out of here. He's like, we are done. We are done with this. Anyway, make sure you follow him on social media. Follow me. Most importantly, have an amazing week. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.